At my son's wedding, the bride sat me by the bathroom wall. Yes, right there, beside the door that opened and closed with a constant rush of guests. Can you picture that? The smell of disinfectant, the clang of the latch. Every time someone brushed past me, I felt smaller as if I didn't belong. Have you ever felt invisible? In your own family? That was me. I smoothed the wrinkles of my dress, the one I'd saved for months to buy. I had chosen a deep navy because it reminded me of dignity. But dignity doesn't matter much when your chair is placed next to a trash bin. I looked out at the tables, beautifully decorated with orchids and glowing candles. Her family sat in the front row laughing, clinking glasses. And me? I was hidden in the shadows. I caught myself whispering, "Why am I here if I'm treated like this?" You know, respect doesn't ask for much, just a seat where your presence is noticed. Just a glance that says, "We see you, we honor you." But that night, I was treated like clutter to be tucked away. And here's the twist you don't see yet. I didn't come empty-handed. In my bag, tucked under the table, was a box. Not just a box, the box. A gift meant to change lives. A gift that held years of sacrifice. A gift no one saw coming. I remember tightening my grip on that box's ribbon while listening to the muffled music from the dance floor. Do you ever sit in a room full of people and feel like the loneliest person alive? That was me at my son's wedding, pushed against a cold wall. And as I sat there, watching the bride whirl across the floor, I whispered to myself, "One day, they'll understand what they lost when they pushed me aside." Because sometimes the most powerful revenge doesn't come with shouting. It comes in silence, holding on to the one thing everyone wanted and choosing when or if to give it away. Stay with me because what happened after that moment turned the entire wedding upside down. I didn't always live in silence. Once, New York was a symphony to me. The taxis honking, the subways screeching, the chatter of people rushing down Fifth Avenue. It felt alive. But when you're raising a child on your own, that same symphony becomes noise you have to fight against every single day. I was 27 when my husband passed. A heart attack in the middle of winter. One minute we were arguing about bills. The next minute he was gone, just like that. And I was left with a toddler, a tiny apartment in Queens, and a mountain of fear. Have you ever looked at your child sleeping and whispered to yourself, "I can't fail you"? That became my mantra. Every night, every shift, every sacrifice. I carry those words. I trained as a nurse, long hours, endless nights. I'd come home with the smell of disinfectant clinging to my uniform, my legs swollen from standing. But I kept going. Why? Because my son needed shoes. Because rent was due. Because groceries don't wait. There were times I skipped meals. I told him I'm not hungry, when in reality, I had just enough money for one plate of spaghetti. He slurped the noodles while I drank tap water and smiled, pretending it was enough for me. And dreams? I once dreamed of being a painter. Did you know that? My sketchbooks are still hidden in a box in the closet. Charcoal drawings, oils smeared on cheap canvas. But life doesn't care about your dreams when survival is at stake. So I put down my brushes and picked up double shifts. Flashback. I remember one winter night the radiator broke in our building. It was freezing. I wrapped my son in layers of blankets, then sat by his bed all night, blowing warm air into my hands and rubbing his feet just so he wouldn't shiver. My body ached, but I stayed awake. That was love. That was motherhood in New York City. You know what's funny? People think mothers like me are weak, invisible, disposable. Let me ask you. Would a weak person work 18-hour shifts, then walk home through snow at midnight just to make sure her child never missed school the next morning? Would a weak person swallow her tears while handing over her last dollar for a field trip so her son wouldn't feel left out? I carried everything alone. The bills, the fears, the loneliness. And still, I never complained. At least not out loud. Sometimes I would stand at the window of our apartment watching lights flicker in other people's homes. Families sitting around dinner tables, laughter spilling through thin walls. And me? I pressed my forehead against the glass and whispered, "One day, it will all be worth it." And here's what no one knew that night. While they thought I was just an old woman tucked away in a corner, I was sitting on a secret bigger than all their assumptions. Stay with me because soon you'll learn how those years of sacrifice turned into something none of them saw coming. All those years of sacrifice, all the sleepless nights in New York, they weren't just scars on my back, they became bricks. Bricks I stacked quietly, building something no one could see. And tucked inside that something was my secret. I never told anyone about it. Not my sisters back in Brooklyn, not even my closest friend Angela, who used to drag me out for coffee after my shifts. My secret was like a flame I cupped in my hands, too fragile to let the wind blow it out, too precious to share with people who wouldn't understand. It started with an insurance payout, small really. Just enough after my husband's death to make rent less of a nightmare. Most people would have spent it on bills, but me? I saved, I scraped, I learned. Nights off, when I wasn't collapsing into bed, I read books about money. I listened to old cassette tapes on investing. My coworkers thought I was crazy. "Melissa," they laughed, "you'll never beat Wall Street." Maybe they were right. But maybe they didn't know what desperation can do to a woman who refuses to stay small. So I tried. Little steps, a savings bond here, a cautious stock there. Sometimes I lost, sometimes I gained. But over time, I grew a tiny nest egg. And then one day, I stumbled onto an investment that actually bloomed. Not fast, not flashy, just steady, like watching a tree push through concrete. Have you ever watered something for so long, not even knowing if it'll live? And then suddenly, one morning, you see a bud? That was me. My bud was a portfolio that against all odds started to multiply, slowly but surely. And then came the day, the letter. I can still hear the crinkle of the envelope when I opened it. A company buyout, some merger, something so complicated I barely understood it. But the check? Oh, I understood that. Enough zeros to make me sit down on the kitchen floor and laugh until I cried. That was my moment. That was the day I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had the power to give. So I started dreaming again. Not about paintings or galleries, but about my son. About the life I wanted to hand him. A wedding gift not of dishes or toasters or envelopes of cash, but something monumental. Something that said, "You are secure, you are loved, your mother did this for you." I found an apartment overlooking Central Park. Wide windows, sunlight pouring in at dawn. A place where a young couple could build a future. I signed the deed quietly, my heart racing, imagining the look on his face when I handed him the box. Inside that box, I tucked the papers neatly, along with a check. $3 million, my savings, my love, my years. Do you see it? Do you feel the weight of it? Because for me, it wasn't just money. It was every skipped meal, every cold night without heat, every time I sewed the same coat so my son could have new shoes. All of it, compressed into one gift. And yet, I kept it a secret. Wrapped it in simple ivory paper tied with a ribbon. No one at that wedding knew. They saw me as a burden, a shadow to be hidden by the bathroom wall. But in my hands, hidden under that table, I held a fortune. Here's the irony. Respect can't be bought, but freedom? Freedom sometimes comes with a price tag, and in that moment, I was ready to pay it for him. But let me ask you this. What happens when the people you want to honor show you nothing but disdain? Do you still give them everything? Or do you remind them that even a mother has limits? Stay with me, because the moment that question answered itself, it shook an entire ballroom. The morning of the wedding, New York looked brighter than usual. I remember standing by my window, looking at the skyline, thinking, this is it. The day my son starts his new life. My dress was pressed, navy blue with tiny pearl buttons. My hands trembled as I pinned on the brooch my late husband once gave me. a small reminder that even though he wasn't there, a part of him would walk with me. I arrived early because that's what mothers do, right? Always show up before the music starts, just to make sure everything is perfect. The venue was buzzing. White flowers everywhere, music rehearsing in the background, photographers setting their lights. Guests drifted in with laughter, clinking glasses, silk dresses brushing against polished floors. And me? I stood at the edge of it all, smiling, holding my small gift box wrapped in ivory paper. My heart swelled with pride. After everything, years of sacrifice, years of scraping by, I was finally here to give back. But then, something shifted. I asked one of the ushers, "Excuse me, where's my seat?" He glanced at the chart, then at me, and pointed, "There, by the wall." I followed his hand. My chair was tucked right beside the bathroom door. Yes, the bathroom. Every time it opened, I'd hear the flush, smell the harsh bleach. Guests would walk past me adjusting their gowns, pretending not to notice me sitting there. Do you know what it feels like when the world tells you without words that you don't matter? That's what it felt like. At first, I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe there was some mix-up. Maybe my real seat was waiting for me closer to the front, where a mother belongs. So I walked up to the head table, hoping someone would correct it. But no. There were smiles for the bridesmaids, jokes for the groomsmen, champagne poured for friends of the bride's family. And here's the thing that stung. I saw strangers, distant relatives I barely knew, seated right near the altar. Faces I couldn't even place in a family tree had better seats than me. The woman who raised the groom. My stomach twisted. I sat back down on that cold chair by the bathroom wall, the gift box balanced on my lap. Every time the door swung open, a gust of air rushed at me. Disinfectant, cold tile. A reminder of where they thought I belonged. I thought of all the nights I worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. The Christmases I gave my son the best gifts I could afford, even if it meant my shoes had holes. And now, on his wedding day, I was placed beside a toilet. Tell me, what would you feel? Would you smile through it, or would something inside you start to crack? I watched as people leaned in close to the bride, complimenting her dress, clinking their glasses, laughing so easily. Meanwhile, my heart grew heavier. I pressed my hand against the ivory ribbon of the box and whispered to myself, "Hold it together. Not here. Not now." But deep down, the truth was bubbling. Respect isn't optional. Love isn't supposed to humiliate. And yet, there I was, reduced to a shadow on the edge of the celebration. The irony? No one knew what sat in my lap. No one knew the weight of that box, or the power inside it. Stay with me, because what happened next turned a humiliating seat by the bathroom into the center of the whole story. I thought I could swallow the humiliation. Sit there, smile politely, pretend the bleach smell and the slamming bathroom door didn't bother me, pretend that being invisible was just part of being the mother of the groom. But then, she came over, the bride. My new daughter-in-law, in her lace gown, flawless makeup, hair pinned like a princess. She leaned down, her perfume strong, her smile practiced for the cameras, and she whispered, low enough so only I could hear, "Better sit there. You won't ruin the photos." Have you ever had a sentence slice straight through your chest? That one did. I froze. My fingers tightened around the ribbon of the gift box in my lap, my throat went dry. The room spun. But not because of champagne, it was shame. Hot, burning, merciless shame. I looked at her, waiting for a laugh, a signal that maybe it was a cruel joke gone wrong, but no. Her eyes were sharp, cold. She meant it. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Because here's the truth. When you've sacrificed everything for your child, your sleep, your dreams, your very body, you don't expect to be worshipped. But you do expect to be treated as human, to be respected. And in that instant, I realized I wasn't. I thought of the nights I worked back-to-back shifts as a nurse, my feet blistered, my back screaming. I thought of the dinners I skipped so my son could eat, the coats I never bought so he could stay warm in winter. 30-plus years of giving, and this was my thank you? A chair by a toilet? A bride telling me not to ruin her perfect pictures? Do you know what it's like to feel your own child's silence in that moment? He stood across the room, laughing with her family, not noticing me. Or maybe noticing, and choosing not to care. Which is worse? I could hear the clinking of glasses, the DJ warming up the mic, the chatter of guests who would never know that the woman sitting by the bathroom wall was holding more than a gift. She was holding back a tidal wave. And for a second I asked myself, should I just take it? Should I smile and swallow it? Like I've swallowed so many other insults just to keep the peace? But something inside me, something I didn't know I still had, rose up, a voice clear, fierce. It said no more. Pattern interrupt, because let me tell you, this wasn't just about a chair. This wasn't just about one wedding day. This was about a lifetime of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. This was about every time someone thought a single mother was easy to disrespect. I sat there, pulse pounding, tears threatening, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I smiled. Yes, smiled. Because suddenly I knew something no one else in that room did. The box in my lap wasn't just paper and ribbon. It was power. And if they wanted to treat me like nothing, they were about to learn what nothing looks like when it walks away. But that decision, that fire, it was born right there, in that breaking point. From her whisper, from his silence, from that cold, humiliating wall. Stay with me, because the next thing I did, it changed everything. The words were still echoing in my ears. Better sit there. You won't ruin the photos. They rang louder than the music, louder than the clinking champagne glasses, louder than the fake laughter spilling across that ballroom. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of metal legs against the marble floor made heads turn. My palms were sweaty, but I tightened my grip on the gift box like it was the only anchor keeping me from collapsing. I rose slowly, deliberately, not in a rush, not in panic, in silence. Have you ever stood up in a room full of people and felt every pair of eyes pinned to your back like arrows? That was me. That was the moment. The bride's smile faltered, just a flicker, but I saw it. She wasn't expecting me to move. My son didn't notice right away. He was laughing with his new in-laws, too far gone in his own world. But the whispers started spreading like fire in dry grass. She's leaving. Why is she taking the gift? What happened? Every step I took across that ballroom floor felt heavier and heavier. My heels tapped against the tile like a drum beat, each sound puncturing the fake joy of the party. I could hear the rustle of dresses as guests leaned toward each other, whispering. The music suddenly felt too cheerful, almost mocking, and in that chaos, I held my head high. My heart was pounding, but I didn't let it show. I knew if I faltered, if I looked small, then they would win. But if I walked tall, if I walked steady, then I was in control. You want to know the irony? The box wasn't heavy at all, just a neat little square, wrapped in ivory paper, tied with a satin bow. But that night, it carried the weight of years, of sacrifice, of dignity, of love that had been trampled on. I walked past tables where strangers stared at me like I was crazy. I walked past relatives who shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they should smile, wave, or hide. And then I walked right past my son, His laughter died the second he saw me. His eyes darted to the box in my arms. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Do you know what silence feels like when it comes from your own child? It cuts sharper than any insult. The bride glanced at him, then at me. Her face flushed, not with shame but with anger. But I didn't stop. Not once. Pattern interrupt because I need you to hear this. This wasn't just me standing up from a bad seat. This was me standing up from years of being told to shrink, to be quiet, to accept less than I deserved. I reached the ballroom doors. My hand tightened on the golden handle, and for a split second I wondered, would anyone stop me? Would anyone care enough to follow? But no one did. Not my son, not the bride, not a single soul. So I pulled the door open. The noise of the wedding, music, chatter, forced joy, collapsed behind me. Outside the hallway was quiet, too quiet. The air smelled of roses from the hotel arrangements, sharp and clean, a cruel contrast to the stench of disinfectant that had haunted my seat. I clutched the box to my chest, and I walked slowly, purposefully, past the reception desk, past strangers who glanced at me and then away, not knowing they were watching a life split in two. And as I stepped into the night air, the city lights spilling around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Not anger, not revenge. Power. But here's the thing. You think that's the end, don't you? That I just walked away and left them with nothing but a table full of guests asking questions. No. That was only the beginning. Stay with me. Because what happened after I walked out of that ballroom, it shook my entire family to the core. The ballroom door clicked shut behind me, and the sound echoed like a gavel, final, sharp, undeniable. For a moment, there was only silence. Just me, the faint scent of roses from the hotel hallway, and the soft hum of the city outside the tall windows. But silence never lasts, does it? It started with the buzzing in my pocket. My phone lit up like a frantic firefly. First one call, then another, the screen kept flashing his name. My son. Each ring stabbed through me, and yet I didn't answer. Have you ever ignored a call from the person you love most, not because you don't care, but because you care too much? That was me, standing in that hallway holding the box to my chest like it was both shield and sword. The vibration didn't stop. It grew louder, angrier. When I silenced one, a new call appeared. Then texts, then voicemails, then his wife's number. The bride, the one who had seated me by the bathroom wall. Her words filled my screen. How could you? Everyone saw you walk out. Bring it back. I sank onto a velvet chair by the window. The city outside was alive, glowing, free. Inside, my world felt small and suffocating. I pressed the gift box tighter against me. They didn't even know what was inside. That's the part that gnawed at me. They weren't worried about me. They weren't worried about my humiliation. They were worried about what I had taken with me. Flashback, because I need you to see this. Years earlier, when my husband died, I was the one left with nothing but bills and a boy to raise. I worked double shifts. I ate toast for dinner so my son could have a hot meal. Back then, no one called to check in. No one worried if I was okay. But now? Now the phone wouldn't stop ringing because I had walked out with a box. I laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was bitter. The kind of laugh that burns your throat on the way out. Another call. This time from a number labeled Uncle George, then Aunt Linda. The party must have ended, but the storm had just begun. My voicemail filled with their voices. My son's panicked and raw. Mom, What are you doing? Please pick up. The bride's shrill and cutting. You embarrassed us. You ruined our night. Give it back. Do you know what it feels like to realize you're only valuable for what you carry, not for who you are? I curled my fingers around the satin bow of the box. It was soft, smooth, almost mocking. They thought it was just another present, a toaster, a set of plates, something to be opened politely, thanked for, and then forgotten. But I knew the truth. I knew the weight of it. And that's why I stayed silent. Because here's the twist you don't see coming. Silence was my power that night. Every call I ignored made them more frantic. Every unanswered buzz reminded me that I wasn't powerless anymore. For once, they were the ones left waiting. I sat there until the clock struck 2 in the morning, until the buzzing slowed, until the anger dulled into desperation. And even then, I didn't open the box. Not yet. You think you're ready to know what was inside, don't you? Trust me, you're not. Not yet. Stay with me, because what I reveal next will change the way you see everything. I sat there in my small apartment, the night still pressing against the windows. My phone had finally gone quiet. For the first time in hours, it was just me and the box, the same box I'd clutched against my chest while walking out of my son's wedding, ignoring every stare that burned into my back. I placed it on the kitchen table. The ribbon glowed faintly under the dim yellow light. My hands trembled as I untied it, not because I was afraid of what was inside, but because I already knew. Have you ever held something so heavy, not because of the weight, but because of the meaning? That's what this box was. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside, the velvet folder lay perfectly flat. I opened it, and the words stared back at me in bold black ink. Deed of ownership, Central Park apartment. My breath caught. Even though I knew, seeing it written there made it real. My mind flicked back to the times I'd walked past Central Park, staring at those towering buildings, whispering to myself, people like me don't live there. And tucked beside the deed like a quiet thunderbolt was a check, $3 million, signed, cleared, mine. Do you understand now why I laughed bitterly when they kept calling? They thought I walked away with a blender, maybe an envelope of cash, some sentimental trinket. They had no idea I had been planning to hand over a future, a home, a fortune that could have set them up for life. But they never asked why. They never asked how. They only saw me sitting by the bathroom wall, and in their eyes, that's where I belonged. I ran my fingers over the numbers on the check. 3 million. My mind raced back. Years of scraping together money, saving every spare penny, investing in a small fund because some banker once told me, "You never know, ma'am, you might get lucky." I hadn't even believed it. Until one day, I did get lucky. Then the insurance settlement from my husband's death, it all came together. It was enough to create a legacy. And here's the cruel part. I had wrapped it all up for them. For my son, for the woman who couldn't even give me a proper seat at their wedding. You know what hurts most? It wasn't just the disrespect. It was the reminder. The reminder that to them, my value was invisible. Not my sacrifices, not my love. Just what I could give. I leaned back, staring at that check like it was fire.
Because it was. It could burn me or it could free me.
For a split second, I imagined the other version of the night. Me placing the box gently on their gift table, them opening it, gasping, the room filled with applause, my son hugging me so tight. A fairy tale. But that wasn't real. Reality was a bride who shoved me into a corner to keep me out of the photos. So no, I wasn't going to hand it over anymore. Pattern interrupt here, because I need to ask you. If you were me, sitting in that kitchen, would you have given it back? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Close the lid, tie the ribbon again, and whisper to yourself, "This is mine now." Because that's exactly what I did. And that decision, that's when everything changed. They thought humiliation would break me. They had no idea it was about to make me stronger than I had ever been. If you think this reveal was shocking, wait until you hear what happened next. Because that's when the real war began. At 3 in the morning. When I closed that box again, tying the ribbon back with shaky fingers, the silence in the apartment wrapped around me like an old, heavy coat. And silence. It always drags me somewhere I don't want to go. Back. Back to the nights when the world was asleep and I was wide awake. Do you know what loneliness sounds like? It's not just quiet. It's the ticking of a cheap kitchen clock when your child's cough won't stop at 2 in the morning.
It's the hum of the refrigerator when you're staring at a near-empty shelf, wondering how to stretch one carton of milk for the week.
I remember sitting at that same kitchen table years ago, textbooks spread out in front of my son. He'd be nodding off, his little head bobbing, and I'd whisper, "Just one more page, sweetheart. One more. You can do this." Meanwhile, I was fighting my own exhaustion after 12 hours in the hospital, my shoes still smelling of bleach and sickness. And when he finally drifted off, I'd just sit there, alone, my hands stiff from scrubbing, my body aching from lifting patients twice my size. No partner to lean on, no family to step in. Just me. Always just me. People think strength looks loud, but mine, it was quiet. It was counting quarters at midnight to see if I could afford both bus fare and his field trip. It was eating toast for dinner so he could have chicken. It was walking past music stores in New York, staring at guitars in the window, remembering the artist I once wanted to be, and telling myself, not now, maybe later, but later never came. Flashback. One sharp memory still stings. A winter night. The radiator hissing weakly. Snow piled high outside. My son wanted a science kit for Christmas. I didn't have the money, so I took extra shifts. 3 nights in a row, running on coffee and stubbornness. My hands cracked from washing, my back screaming. And when I finally gave in that kit, his face lit up like the city skyline. I thought, this is worth it. Every blister, every lonely night, worth it. And now, that same son, grown, married, letting his bride tuck me by the bathroom wall, as if I were clutter to be hidden. Tell me, what do you do with that kind of heartbreak? I pressed the deed against my chest that night like I used to press my son's tiny body against me when he cried. Except this time, I was the one crying. Not out of weakness, but out of years and years of carrying everything alone. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Loneliness isn't always about being without people. Sometimes it's about being surrounded and still unseen. I was invisible back then, in those nights of sacrifice. And I was invisible again at his wedding. But here's the twist. The money in that box, the apartment deed, they weren't born from luck. They were born from every lonely night, every shift, every dream I buried. That fortune was my life's proof. Proof that even in loneliness, I built something. Proof that I mattered. I wiped my eyes and laughed, half bitter, half relieved, because maybe, just maybe, the real gift wasn't what I almost gave away. Maybe the gift was finally realizing I didn't have to beg for recognition anymore. Would you have handed over everything to people who can't even give you a seat of dignity? Or would you, like me, finally say, enough? And if you think this reflection was heavy, wait until you hear the sound of my phone at 3 in the morning. That's when the real storm hit. Stay with me. You ever had your phone ring in the middle of the night and before you even answer, your chest tightens because you just know? That was me. 3 in the morning. The screen lit up and it was my son's name. My heart dropped. I let it ring, twice. 3 times. My hand was shaking when I picked it up. His voice was cracked, rushed, desperate. "Mom, what did you do? Where's the box? Please tell me you didn't—" I could hear the panic, and behind him, her voice. The bride. High-pitched, sharp, almost hysterical. "She took it! She took it! I told you she would! That's theft!" My stomach turned. Theft? They were calling me a thief? After decades of scraping by, giving everything I had to raise him, they thought I would steal from them? I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. He wasn't calling to ask if I was okay. Not to say he missed me after that ugly scene, no. He was calling about the gift, about the money.
Mom, please. You can't do this.
We already told people you were giving us something special. Do you know how this makes us look? That line, "how this makes us look," burned me. Look, appearances, always appearances. Do you know what it's like to realize your child cares more about his image than your dignity? It's like being cut open with a dull knife, slow, jagged. I wanted to scream, to tell him everything I'd lived through to even be able to give that gift. But all that came out was silence. Because sometimes silence says more than words. But she couldn't stay quiet. The bride grabbed the phone. Her voice was shrill, fast, every word like spit. "You're ruining everything. Do you know how selfish this is? That was supposed to be ours. You had no right to embarrass us like this. Selfish. They call me selfish. The woman who worked double shifts while sick? The woman who pawned her jewelry once to cover his tuition? Selfish? My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. I could feel the pulse pounding in my temples. "Selfish," I whispered, but this time it was to myself, repeating it, tasting it, like maybe if I said it enough it would make sense. But it didn't. Here's the thing about 3 in the morning. It strips everything raw. The dark makes the truth sharper. And the truth was this. They didn't see me as a mother. They saw me as a wallet, a bank, a prop for their perfect little wedding picture. I pulled the phone away for a second, stared at the glowing screen. Their voices still spilling out, overlapping, begging, accusing, crying. And I thought, when did love turn into this? When did my son's voice sound more like a creditor than a child?
And you, if you were in my shoes, would you have answered that call? Would you have listened to your child cry not because he lost you, but because he lost the money he thought he owned?
I didn't hang up. Not yet. Something in me needed to hear it all, every ugly word, every accusation, because only then could I finally face what I'd been refusing to admit. I wasn't just unloved in that moment. I was being used. The call went on for 20 minutes, begging, then blaming, then silence except for her sobs. My son's breathing heavy like he was running a marathon he couldn't finish. Finally, he whispered, "Mom, please, please don't do this to us. Do this to them." That phrasing, as if my choice to walk away was some kind of crime, I almost broke. Almost, because I'm still a mother. Because hearing your child plead, there's nothing in the world that cuts deeper. But then I remembered that seat by the bathroom wall, her words, "You won't ruin the photos," the humiliation, the invisibility, and I realized something. I wasn't the one doing something to them. They had done something to me. I held the phone close again, my voice steady now, calm, almost too calm. "I'll talk to you when you're ready to see me as your mother, not your bank." And I ended the call just like that. But don't think it ended there. Because when the sun came up, the storm was just beginning. Stay with me. Because what came after that call changed everything. There comes a moment when your chest stops burning and your voice stops shaking. When the tears dry up and what's left is this: steel. That's where I was. For days after the wedding, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, emails, some from relatives, some from friends, but most from them, my son and his wife. It was a carousel of guilt. How could you do this to us? Then, we need to talk. Then, if you love us, you'll fix this. But here's the thing. I had already fixed it. For years, I had been patching their lives with pieces of mine, covering bills, helping with rent, little loans that were never really loans, birthdays, holidays, emergencies, you name it, I paid for it. And every time I told myself, that's what mothers do. But do you know what mothers don't do? They don't let their children treat them like a machine. Insert request, expect payout. No thank you, no respect, just withdrawals until nothing is left. One afternoon, I finally answered a video call. My son's face filled the screen. He looked tired, angry, desperate. The bride was right beside him, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like I was already guilty. He didn't waste time. Mom, you're blowing this way out of proportion. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you can't just take things back. That's not fair. I took a deep breath. And for once, I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize. Not fair? I repeated, my voice sharper than I expected. Do you even hear yourself? Do you know what's unfair? Working 2 jobs so you could go to college while I ate ramen noodles every night. Selling your father's watch to pay for your textbooks. Sitting by the bathroom wall at your wedding like I was invisible. That's unfair. His mouth opened, but no words came out. She jumped in instead. This isn't about the past. This is about you sabotaging our future. We counted on that gift, and that was it. That was the line. Counted on it. Like I was a bank transfer they had already budgeted for. I leaned closer to the camera. My face filled the screen, my voice steady, low, impossible to ignore. I am not your bank. I am your mother. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. I could see it land. I could see it sting. His eyes darted down, her lips pressed tight. For a second, I thought, maybe, just maybe, they heard me. But even if they didn't, I heard myself, and that mattered more. Do you know how powerful it feels to finally speak the sentence you should have said years ago? It's like breaking chains you didn't even realize you'd been carrying. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that moment. I wasn't crying, I wasn't pleading, I was just clear. For the first time in a long time, I knew who I was. Not an ATM, not a wallet, not a safety net to be trampled. A mother, a woman, a person. And I want you to ask yourself this. Have you ever had to remind someone who you really are? Have you ever had to stop the world mid-sentence and say, enough? You don't get to define me anymore. Because that's where real strength begins. That day, mine began with 8 words. I am not your bank. I am your mother. And trust me, the confrontation that came after made those words echo even louder. Stay with me, because you'll want to hear what happened when the gloves finally came off. There's a sound that doesn't come from outside. It comes from inside you, the pounding of your own heartbeat in your ears when you know something's about to break. That's the sound I heard the night my son came to my house. He didn't knock politely. He banged. The kind of pounding that rattles the frame, the kind of pounding that says, I'm not here to talk, I'm here to demand. When I opened the door, he stormed in. No hug, no pause, no hello, just fury. His wife right behind him, her heels clicking against the floor like little gavel strikes. He turned to me, his face red, eyes wide. Do you have any idea what you've done? You embarrassed us. You ruined our wedding. You cost us our future. And there it was, the verdict. Not a question, not a plea, a sentence. I stood in the living room where the lamp threw shadows across the carpet. My son, my baby, the boy I once held against my chest when he had nightmares, was now staring at me like I was the enemy. I whispered back, more to myself than to him, "Ruined your future? By keeping my dignity?" But he didn't hear it. Or maybe he didn't want to. His voice grew louder. "That money, that apartment, you don't need those things. You should have given it to us. That was the plan. We deserved it. Deserved." That word cut deeper than any insult. Because what did I deserve? Did I deserve the years of double shifts? The loneliness of an empty bed? The humiliation of being hidden by a bathroom wall at my own son's wedding? I stared at him, at the anger, at the entitlement. And then I broke the silence. "You didn't lose money," I said. My voice was low, steady, but it sliced through the air. "You lost me." The words landed like a slap. He blinked. His wife gasped. "You didn't lose money," I repeated, louder this time. "You lost me." Have you ever said something that felt like fire and freedom all at once? That was it for me. For years, I had begged for scraps of appreciation. For years, I had convinced myself that love meant sacrifice, even if it bled me dry. But in that moment, standing in my own home, I realized love without respect isn't love. It's servitude. He tried to speak again, but the words fumbled. His wife shook her head, muttering about betrayal, about greed. But I wasn't listening anymore, because for the first time in a long, long time, I was done. I saw my son's shoulders slump, just slightly, like part of him understood, like a child who realizes the game is over. And I let the silence do the rest. Sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. Do you see it now? This wasn't about money. It was about worth. It was about a mother who refused to be erased. And let me tell you, when I said those words, "You lost me," I didn't just mean for that night. I meant it for every day that would follow. But don't think the story ends here, because walking away from disrespect is one thing. Building a new life from the ashes is another. And that's exactly what I had to do next. Stay with me, because the chapter that followed wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. The morning after that confrontation, I woke up to silence. No buzzing phone, no angry messages. Just the hum of the refrigerator in my kitchen, and the sound of my own breath. It was strange, like the world had finally exhaled after holding its lungs tight for too long. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and looked out at the gray city skyline. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning my day around someone else's needs. I wasn't rushing to save, to give, to bend. I was just here. But silence can be dangerous too, can't it? It leaves space for doubt, for guilt, for the question that whispered in the back of my mind. Did I really just walk away from my own son? I held that thought for a moment. Then I answered it out loud like I was talking to you right now. No. I didn't walk away from him. I walked away from being used. That shift changed everything. Within weeks, I was standing in a bright, sunlit office with a real estate agent sliding a folder across a desk. Inside were papers, my name on a deed, a house that was mine, not a gift, not a promise dangled, not something I'd sacrifice for someone else's dream, mine. Do you know what it feels like to turn a key in a new lock? To push open a door and realize every inch of that space belongs to you? I'll tell you, it feels like freedom has a sound. It's the creak of new hinges, the echo of your footsteps across empty rooms, the laughter you can imagine filling the walls. The first night in my new place, I didn't unpack. I didn't even make the bed. I just lay on the floor in the living room, staring up at the ceiling, smiling like a fool. No one could take this from me. No one could belittle me here. I thought back to the bathroom wall at the wedding. How small I felt. How invisible. And now here I was, in a space where every window opened to the world, and every corner reminded me, you are allowed to take up space. Of course, it wasn't all fairy tales. There were moments when loneliness tapped at the window like rain, moments I wished I could pick up the phone and call my son, tell him to come over for dinner, pretend none of it happened. But then I'd remember the look in his eyes, that mix of anger and entitlement, and I'd hold the phone tighter until the urge passed. Because healing isn't just about what you gain. It's also about what you refuse to take back. One afternoon, while arranging books on my new shelf, I found an old photo tucked in between the pages of a cookbook. It was me and my son at the park, him no older than 5, sitting on my lap with ice cream dripping down his chin. His smile was pure, his trust was total. I sat on the floor holding that photo and I cried, not out of regret, but out of grief. Grief for the years I'd given everything and the moment I realized it still wasn't enough. But grief can also be a teacher. It showed me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. I began filling the house with new rituals. Saturday mornings, I'd bake muffins and eat them warm, not worrying if anyone else wanted the first bite. Sundays, I'd take long walks through the park, breathing in the air like it was medicine. And slowly, the house stopped feeling empty. It started feeling alive. Neighbors would wave when I watered the flowers by the porch. A little girl from next door once brought me a drawing of a house with a big smiling sun above it and said, "This is yours." And you know what? She was right. For so long, I thought my identity was tied to what I gave away. But in this new chapter, I learned something different. Your worth doesn't shrink because you keep something for yourself. It grows. Have you ever started over, even when it terrified you? That's where I was, scared but free, lonely but strong. And every single day, I reminded myself, Melissa, you deserve this peace. You've earned this breath. It was about finding a voice. And trust me, once I found it, I wasn't about to stay quiet anymore. Stay with me, because what I decided to do next might surprise you. After I moved into my new house, I thought my story ended there. A woman finally free, finally standing tall. But the truth, freedom isn't just something you keep for yourself. If you're lucky, if you're blessed with enough of it, you pass it on. One afternoon, I was at the community center down the street. They host free yoga, painting, little workshops for seniors. I went there to meet people, to remind myself that life wasn't just about surviving, but about living. And that's where I overheard 2 women talking by the coffee machine. One whispered, "My son took my checkbook again, said he'd pay me back, but he never does." And the other sighed. "Mine has my debit card. He says it's easier that way, but I don't even know how much is left in my account anymore." My chest tightened. It was like hearing echoes of my own past. The shame, the quiet desperation, the way we tell ourselves it's family so it's okay, but it's not okay. It's abuse. And that's when it hit me. Maybe my fight wasn't just about me anymore. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with papers spread out and a pen in my hand, I made a decision. I was going to start something new. A fund. A small pool of money at first, but with a purpose bigger than myself. I called it the Freedom Fund. It wasn't fancy. No lawyers in suits, no press release. Just me, a notebook, and a heart that refused to stay quiet. The idea was simple: to help older people, especially women who were being drained, used, or silenced by their own families. Not just with money, but with education, legal guidance, and a voice. Because sometimes what we need isn't another dollar, it's the courage to say enough. Of course, I had doubts. Who was I to start a fund? I wasn't a billionaire. I wasn't a celebrity. But then I remember the box I once carried, the one holding deeds, papers, and a check that could have changed everything for my son and his wife. And I thought, if I can walk away from giving millions to those who disrespected me, I can walk toward giving thousands to those who actually need it. So I began. I met with a retired lawyer who offered free consultations for seniors. I reached out to a financial advisor who once helped me navigate my insurance payout. He agreed to volunteer monthly workshops, and little by little people showed up. Not for me, but for themselves. You should have seen their faces. Women in their 70s who had been writing checks for years, finally learning to say no. Men who thought they were alone, realizing they weren't the only ones hiding empty wallets in their nightstands. Have you ever watched someone's shoulders physically rise, as if a weight was finally lifted? That's what I saw. And it reminded me, freedom isn't just a place you move into, it's a fire you pass from one candle to another. I remember one woman, Linda. She came to me after a workshop, hands trembling. She whispered, "My grandson has my credit card. He says I'm old. I don't need it. Do you think I can get it back?" I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Yes, and you deserve to." A month later, she came back smiling. She had canceled the card, opened a new account. She even bought herself a new pair of shoes, red ones. And when she showed them to me, she said, "This is the first time I've spent my money on myself in years." I can't explain the pride I felt in that moment, because that's what freedom looks like. Sometimes it's not millions of dollars. Sometimes it's a pair of red shoes. The more I shared my story, the more people reached out. Some with tears, some with anger, some just wanting to be heard. And slowly, the Freedom Fund became more than a name. It became a movement. And here's the thing, I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because I knew what it was like to feel invisible. To give until you're empty and still be told it's not enough. I never wanted anyone else to sit by a bathroom wall at their child's wedding and wonder if they mattered. I wanted them to know, you matter. Your dignity matters. Your money matters. Your life matters. Starting over in my 60s wasn't what I planned. But maybe it was exactly what I was meant to do, because respect can't be bought. But with the right choices, with boundaries, with courage, freedom can be built, not just for me. There's a little cliff near my new house. It's not grand like the postcards of Santorini or Malibu, but it has its own quiet power. The rocks are rugged, the air smells of salt, and the sea below never stops moving. That's where I go now, when I want to remind myself that I survived. The first morning I stood there, the sun was just coming up, pink bleeding into gold, waves slapping against the shore, gulls cutting through the air like they owned it. I wrapped my sweater tighter around me and whispered to myself, "You made it here, Melissa." Have you ever had a moment where the world finally slows down? Where you can hear your own breath, feel your own heartbeat, and realize you don't owe anyone an explanation anymore? That was mine. For so many years, I lived in the shadow of what will they think? What will my son think? What will the neighbors think? What will the family say if I don't give, if I don't bend, if I don't sacrifice? But the ocean doesn't ask questions. It doesn't care about gossip. It just exists. Wild, unapologetic, endless. And, standing there, I realized that's who I wanted to be. I used to believe respect came from how much you gave, how much you endured, how small you could make yourself so others could shine. But now I know the truth. Respect can't be bought. But money bought me freedom. That sentence still stings when I say it out loud, because I wish respect was automatic. I wish love alone had been enough. But it wasn't. And if I had to choose between chasing respect from people who refused to give it, or buying myself freedom to live with dignity, then I'll choose freedom. Every single time. Sometimes when I sit on that cliff, I think back to the bathroom wall at the wedding, to the way my son looked past me, to the smirk on my daughter-in-law's face. It used to feel like a wound I'd never heal from, but now it feels like a scar. And you know what scars are? Proof. Proof you fought, proof you bled, proof you lived through it. I lived through it, and I came out stronger. I know not everyone gets a second chance at 60. I know some of you watching this feel stuck right now. Maybe in a marriage where you're not seen. Maybe in a family that takes and takes and never gives. Maybe in a job that's crushing your spirit. And you're sitting there wondering, is it too late for me? Let me tell you, from a woman who walked away from a bathroom wall at her own son's wedding, it is never too late. Freedom doesn't always look like a mansion by Central Park. Sometimes it looks like saying no for the first time. Sometimes it looks like keeping $20 in your purse and spending it on yourself, not on someone else's endless demands. Sometimes it looks like standing on a cliff, watching the sea, knowing you're enough. I don't tell you this story to make you sad. I tell you because maybe you need to hear it. Maybe you need someone to say out loud what you've been afraid to admit. You deserve better. You deserve peace. You deserve to breathe in your own life without apology. If a woman like me, tired, wrinkled, written off, can find her way back to herself, then so can you. So I'll leave you with this image. Picture me, a woman in her 60s, hair messy from the sea breeze, standing on a cliff with the sunrise painting the sky, alone, but not lonely. Quiet, but not silenced. Stronger than I've ever been. Because respect can't be bought. But freedom? Freedom is priceless. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever walked away from disrespect, no matter how hard it was? Tell me your story in the comments. I promise, someone out there needs to hear it.